In my previous video, I talked about the grace that I have received because I had two parents that both had really strong relationships with God. But today I want to go a bit more into depth about how the Holy Spirit has introduced himself to me and how he built his relationship with me. So as many of you, like many of you guys and girls, my parents used to read Bible stories to me when I went to bed, my older sister also. But if I think about my mum specifically, she was a real prayer warrior. And I remember that she would go into a room and she would kneel at her bed, and our sausage dog would come and lie here in the back of her legs, and he would get comfortable because he knew that he would lie there for hours while mum was busy praying for all of us and for everyone. She made lists that people that she prayed for. I mimicked that, and I would also pray for my friends. But this is where we started to become a bit more personal, where the Holy Spirit took my mimicking of my mum and started to make it more personal. And I would pray not just for my friends, but challenged me because the idea got into my head to start praying for the people that I don't really like, the people that's not nice to you at school. And that was really difficult for me because the challenge was not to pray for them to become better. The challenge was to pray good things for them so that they would do good at school, that they would have a good relationship with their friends. That was quite difficult for me, but it's a very good example for me of how the Holy Spirit took my mum's relationship and started to tweak it for me to become more personal, more like who and what I am. The other thing that my mum did is she would just walk around in the home doing chores, packing away our clothes in the cupboards and stuff, and she would be talking to herself and then talk to God, talk to herself again, talk to God, like all mingled together. And it would just be a conversation. And I started to mimic that also, walking home from school or walking home from my friends or sports or whatever. It became one of my greatest experience to talk out loud to God, to just talk to him. On my dad's side, my dad was a real academic, so he made notes, and he was a Sunday school teacher since before I was born, and he had little booklets, many of them, that was filled with notes that he made, and he would read the Bible and then make notes, and there was notes in his Bible itself, and his Bible was always full of little pieces of paper. And I also started to mimic my dad in that sense. Instead of having a Bible study book or something, I would read the Bible, not understand what's written there, but read it because he does. And then again, how the Holy Spirit works and how it started to become more personal. I would be at school or at sports or whatever, or with my friends, and then some of this that I've read would come back to me, and there would be a real life situation, and the Holy Spirit would teach me in that moment, or we would go to the movies, and I would watch the movies, and got nothing to do with the Bible or whatever, but suddenly in that moment where I'm watching this movie, it connects something from the Bible in my mind. So the Holy Spirit started to teach me within the moment, using that stuff that I've read that I didn't necessarily understand, but connecting it in real life situations in that moment. A very good example of this for me was my Smurfs. Those of you that was born around about the same time as me would remember that there was Smurfs was a big thing, and at the garages, the gas shops, you could buy them, and I had a huge imagination, so I built from a shoebox. I built a home for them, and I cut little windows for them, and I used matchboxes and used the matches for little legs for making beds, and cutting pieces of cotton wool, mattresses, and smaller ones for cushions, and I would arrange my Smurfs in there. And like Toy Story, I was absolutely convinced that they were alive, and many times I tried to trick them, and I would go to bed or make as if I'm going to bed, close my eyes, and then suddenly open them. But they were always too quick for me. Then they would go and stand in their specific ways. But this is really an excellent example for me of how God used this and Bible and connected this and teach me through this way. So while I was playing with my Smurfs, this part in the Bible where God, right at the beginning, tells us how it was His breath, He breathed life into us. And I remember I took one of those little Smurfs and I held it like that in my hand, and I brought it to my mouth and I blew my breath into him. And suddenly I got a huge fright, because I just thought for a moment, imagine the Smurf comes to life. Not because I would be afraid because it was suddenly alive. No, because I wasn't sure whether this Smurf would like me or not. It's not to say that that Smurf would like to be my friend. And that was a huge teaching for me. I think one of the biggest ones as a child, where God connected Bible and just my normal day-to-day play and teach me really something about Him, His relationship with us, Him creating us, and the way that He thinks about us. I also remember the first time that I really trusted God for something. I suppose there were earlier times, but this is the one that I can really remember. I was, I think, in grade 1 or 2, and I got really ill. So my teacher sent me to the office and told me to ask the secretary there to phone my mum. And she couldn't get hold of me, so she asked me to sit on a chair there next to the office. And I was sitting there, but I was really, really, really sick. And I prayed and I asked God, please send my mum to come and fetch me. And I just stood up and I walked outside, and nobody actually stopped me. And then when I got outside, I went and sat on the curb, and the next moment, my mum came driving past. She was on her way to the shop, so that's most probably why the secretary couldn't get hold of her when she phoned to our house. But that had a huge impact on my belief in God, in my trusting of Him, my trust in God. From then onwards, it became a more natural thing for me to trust Him for things. I want to connect this with the same type of situation where I can't remember exactly what it was, something silly that I wasn't sure whether I should do it or not do it. And I prayed about it. And then the idea of Gideon came into my mind, where Gideon had this piece of wool. He also didn't know if he was making the right choice, and I asked God if he puts it outside and it's dry, but the dew is all around it. Then he would know, and then that wasn't good enough. It happened, but it wasn't good enough. So then he asked God to change it around. And I used that same thing. So, this little Pritt sticks, the glue sticks that you use at school. So I had one of those, and I asked God, okay, if this is what I need to do, I'm going to put it here on my shelf, and tomorrow morning when I walk past, if it's on its side, I know that I need to do it. So the next day I got there, and it was just still standing there. So I thought, okay, so I'm asking God, okay, so if I mustn't do it, then it must be on its side. So the next day when I walked past, it was still like that. I struggled a little bit with that, and then I realized He went further and taught me that this thing that I'm wondering whether I should do it or not do it, it depends on the timing. Sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's not a good thing. So the first story that I told you, where I asked God for something specific and it really happened, and it helped me to really trust God for the rest of my life. But then this next story, where it was a little bit more difficult thing, God didn't teach me a clear-cut thing. He taught me that there's something in between sometimes. Sometimes he could help you in the moment, but sometimes there's more to it, and one must just take a moment and think about it. So I realized that Holy Spirit has started to teach me complex things as I got older, and as my relationship with Him started to grow. The Holy Spirit also used the broader community to build His relationship with me. Definitely the church community, but especially also my family. And it was absolutely amazing for me to grow up in a broader family group where conversations about God was just absolutely natural to us. I mean, if I think back on it, I don't know how old we were, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And it was just natural to start conversations about God and about the Bible. It just happened. As a child, I wasn't even aware that the Holy Spirit was teaching me and introducing himself to me and to get to know him. But as I got older, he started to explain it to me. And I think one of the most profound verses that he gave to me, and suddenly it just clicked to me, and I realized what he was busy doing to me, was here in John 14. The Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. And this is exactly what I have experienced. The Holy Spirit reminds me within the moment, while I'm busy playing with my toys and while I was with my friends. He reminded me of things that I've read in the Bible that I didn't even understand at that stage. He reminded me in that moment, and then he taught me.